My son is 14. His name's Caleb. He was born with a heart condition that's followed us around his entire life like some unpaid bill that keeps showing up. Surgeries when he was little. A lot of appointments, restrictions on sports, medication reminders that run our household clock better than any calendar. People hear that and they either go soft on him or they get weirdly critical about it. My sister is the second kind, not openly cruel or anything. She just has this tone sometimes. Like she thinks Caleb gets away with things because people feel sorry for him, and I'm not going to pretend Caleb is the easiest kid in the world. He's stubborn, he's sarcastic sometimes. He's 14, which already comes with attitude even before you add the hospital history and years of being told he's fragile. But he's not some monster kid, anyway. My niece, Lily, she turned 16 last week, big baking hobby. Apparently she's gotten really serious about it lately. My sister had been talking about it in the family group chat for weeks. Something about homemade ice cream she'd been practicing all summer. We got invited like everyone else. I almost didn't go, not because of Lily. I actually like her. She's always been polite with Caleb too. It's just family gatherings with my sister can get tense, the kind where everything feels like it's one small misunderstanding away from turning into a lecture. But Caleb wanted to go, mostly because there'd be a pool and other kids, so we went. I brought a birthday gift, a nice one too. A stand mixer attachment set because Lily had mentioned once she wanted to experiment with different baking tools. I actually put thought into it, wrapped it myself the night before. Caleb came with me carrying it when we walked in. The party itself started fine. The backyard was full of people. Kids everywhere, music going. My sister is running around playing host like she always does when there's a crowd. Lily looked happy. Her friends were there, a bunch of girls her age, parents chatting on the patio. Caleb hung near the pool with the other boys. Nothing weird, nothing dramatic. At one point, Lily brought out these little cups of homemade berry ice cream she'd made. Everyone kept talking about how good it was. I had one. Caleb had one too. It was actually great. She'd made extra, apparently. Some of the girls wanted to wait and eat theirs later, so Lily put a plate of their cups back in the freezer. That's about the last normal moment I remember. I was sitting with my brother-in-law talking about work stuff when we heard this loud splash sound from the pool area, and then Lily screaming for her mom. Not a normal kid yelling sound either. It was loud, very loud. People started moving towards the backyard. By the time I got there, Lily was crying, full tears, pointing at the pool. Floating in the water were these little paper ice cream cups. Kids in the pool looked confused, and my sister was already next to Lily asking what happened. Lily kept saying that Caleb grabbed the plate and threw it in the pool. I remember looking at Caleb when she said that. He was sitting in one of the patio chairs nearby scrolling his phone. Calm, barely even reacting. Which honestly didn't look like a kid who'd just done something dramatic 2 seconds earlier. He looked up when people started looking at him, and right away he said he had nothing to do with it, said Lily dropped it herself. Lily's friends immediately started arguing that he was lying. Kids talking over each other. And before anyone could sort it out, my sister turned straight to Caleb and told him to stand up. Not asked, told. Then she started demanding he apologize, right there, in front of everybody. I stepped in at that point because the whole situation was already getting ugly. I told her to slow down. Caleb kept saying he didn't do it, said Lily was the one who dropped the plate when they were arguing about the ice cream, but my sister had already decided. You could hear it in her voice. That tone again. She said she believed Lily, said Lily wouldn't lie about something like that, which is a weird thing to say when you're basically telling another kid he must be lying. Then my nephew, her son Ryan, jumped in, backing Lily up. That just made everything louder. Kids talking. Adults staring. And my sister kept pressing Caleb to admit it. Just say sorry and we'll move on. That's what she kept repeating. But Caleb kept saying he didn't do it. Now maybe people expected me to just stand there and let him get grilled like a suspect, because he's the kid with the attitude reputation. But I'm his father. I know my son. And the way everyone was surrounding him suddenly, like he'd committed some crime at a 16-year-old's birthday party, felt way over the top. So I told her she needed to stop humiliating him. If she wanted to talk about it, we could talk privately. But this whole public interrogation thing wasn't happening. That's when the real argument started. She said I was defending bad behavior. I said she'd already decided he was guilty before hearing anything. She said Lily had witnesses. I said they were Lily's friends. Voices started getting sharper. My mom tried stepping in, telling everyone to calm down. But my sister kept insisting Caleb apologize, and Caleb kept saying he didn't do it. At one point he looked at me and said quietly, "Dad, I swear I didn't." I believed him, still do. Eventually, my sister snapped and told me to take my son and leave, right there in front of everyone, like we'd shown up just to ruin her daughter's birthday. Mom tried to smooth things over again, but my sister kept repeating it, take him and go. So I did. I told Caleb we were leaving. He grabbed his backpack and followed me towards the gate. People were watching in that uncomfortable, silent way families do when they don't want to get involved, but they're definitely paying attention. As we passed the gift table, I saw the wrapped box I'd brought for Lily sitting there with the rest of the presents. And I stopped. Maybe it was petty. Maybe it was a reaction. But the thought that crossed my mind was simple. If we're being thrown out like we did something terrible, why should my gift stay? So I picked it up and walked out. Caleb noticed once we were halfway to the car. He asked why I took it. I told him because gifts are for people who actually want you there. He didn't say anything after that. When we got in the car, he looked, honestly, kind of shaken. Quietly in that way, kids get after adults yelling around them. So instead of driving straight home, I pulled into a burger place he likes. We sat there for a bit. I told him he handled himself well, that I was proud of him for not giving in just because people were pressuring him. He nodded but mostly stared at his fries. I think the whole thing embarrassed him more than anything. Before we left, I told him we'd do something fun tomorrow to make up for the crappy afternoon, maybe the arcade downtown. He finally smiled a little at that, and as far as I'm concerned, my son didn't deserve the way he was treated at that party. Not by my sister, not by anyone. Follow up, I have some things to say if you don't remember me. I'm the older brother, Caleb's dad. The one who walked out of Lily's birthday party with the present in my hand like some kind of arsehole stealing his own gift back. I'll admit that part again because apparently that's the thing everyone keeps repeating. Yes, I took the gift. No, I didn't plan to. It wasn't some dramatic revenge move I'd rehearsed. I saw the box sitting there when we were leaving. My son had just been told to get out of the party in front of 30 people, and something in my brain went fine then, so I picked it up. Heat of the moment. If people want honesty, there it is. That was about 3 weeks ago now. And the stupid thing is, I'm actually willing to give the gift back. I never even opened it. It's been sitting in the trunk of my car this whole time because I kept forgetting to bring it inside. But somehow, we're all still fighting over a plate of ice cream, like it's evidence in a criminal trial. That's the part I can't get over. It was ice cream, not a broken heirloom, not a smashed window, ice cream. And my kid has been dragged through 3 weeks of family drama over it. The first thing that happened after the party was my mom trying to fix it the way she always fixes things. Sunday dinner. She called me midweek with that careful voice she uses when she thinks everyone's being unreasonable. She said, "You and your sister just need to sit down together. It'll feel different when you're face to face." I knew exactly what she was hoping for. One of those quiet family resets where people eat pasta and pretend the argument never existed. She invited both of us, which already told me she'd talk to my sister too. I asked if Lily and the kids would be there. Mom hesitated just long enough that I knew the answer before she said it. Apparently, Lily had already said she wasn't coming if Caleb was there. 16 years old and already issuing attendance ultimatums. That annoyed me more than it probably should have. But I said we'd come anyway. Caleb didn't seem excited about it. He shrugged when I told him. That's been his general mood since the party, actually. Not upset exactly, just harder around the edges. I noticed it first at home. He snaps quicker now. Small stuff turns into arguments. My wife asked him to clean his room last week, and he muttered something under his breath that turned into a whole 10-minute fight. That wasn't really like him before. He's always had attitude, sure, but this new version feels sharper. Like something in him decided adults can't be trusted to be fair. So why bother trying? I don't love that, but I also understand where it came from. If I were 14 and a whole backyard full of adults watched someone accuse me of something and nobody believed me, I'd probably get a little rough around the edges too. Anyway, Sunday dinner. Caleb and I drove over together. My wife stayed home because she said she didn't want to sit in the middle of another argument, which, fair. When we got there, my sister was already inside with Ryan and her husband. Lily wasn't there. My mom tried to act normal right away. Food was already cooking. Asking Caleb about school was like nothing weird had happened recently, but you could feel the tension in the room like static. Ryan barely looked at Caleb. Those two used to hang out a lot at family things. Same video games, same dumb YouTube channels. Not best friends, but close enough that they'd usually disappear to another room together. This time Ryan just stayed on the couch scrolling his phone. Caleb said hi. Ryan nodded but didn't respond. Later I found out they'd had some school event earlier that week, some sports assembly or something, and Ryan apparently avoided him there too. Caleb told me about it in the car afterwards. He just walked the other way, like I did something. That part irritated me more than the dinner, because it sounded like Ryan was being told to keep his distance. Punishment by social exile, very mature family strategy. Dinner itself lasted maybe 40 minutes before the ice cream incident came up again. My sister said she still hadn't received an apology. I said Caleb already explained what happened. She said Lily and her friends witnessed it. I said Lily's friends were hardly unbiased observers, back and forth. At some point I mentioned the gift. I told her I still had it and was willing to give it back. I even said out loud that taking it was petty, which for me is basically the emotional equivalent of waving a white flag. But apparently that wasn't enough, because my sister immediately said the gift wasn't the issue. The issue was Caleb refusing to admit what he did. That's when I said something that probably didn't help the situation. I said that even if Caleb had thrown the ice cream, which he says he didn't, it still wouldn't justify the level of drama everyone's created. Because at the end of the day, it was still ice cream. And my son already got yelled at in front of a yard full of people. How much punishment are we supposed to squeeze out of a dessert tray? My sister didn't like that framing. She said the point was respect. I said respect goes both directions. Mum tried to interrupt, but by then the argument had already taken off again. Eventually, Caleb and I left early. Round 2 of family reconciliation, unsuccessful. A few days after that, another thing happened that made everything weirder. Apparently one of Lily's friend's parents got a message from me, which sounds dramatic, but here's what actually happened. I'd been told that Lily's friends were the main witnesses backing her version of events, so I sent a polite message to one of their mums asking if her daughter had maybe misunderstood what she saw. That's it. But apparently that crossed some invisible boundary because the parent got uncomfortable and told my sister about it. Now the narrative floating around the family is that I'm contacting teenagers to pressure them, which is not remotely what happened. Still, add that to the growing list of reasons everyone's mad at me. Around the same time, something else started happening. Caleb began getting weird looks at school. Apparently a couple cousins who go to the same school had heard their parents talking about the party, and the story spread from there. By the time it reached Caleb, it had turned into, he threw a tantrum and ruined Lily's birthday. So I did what any parent would do when their kid gets dragged into rumors. I called the school, not to accuse anyone of bullying exactly, just to ask if they could keep an eye on things since Caleb has a medical condition and stress isn't exactly great for his heart. That conversation somehow made its way back to the family too. Now I'm apparently bringing the school into a family disagreement, which again feels like people twisting normal parental concern into some kind of escalation. But the thing that actually rattled me a little happened at home. My wife asked me a question one night while we were doing dishes. Very calm, very quiet. She said, "Are you completely sure Caleb told the truth?" And I didn't like how quickly that question irritated me. Because of course I'm sure. I told her that. She didn't argue, just nodded and said, "Okay." But the way she asked stuck with me. Meanwhile, Caleb's behavior hasn't exactly been helping my case. Last weekend, he got into an argument with a kid at the park over a basketball call and ended up throwing the ball across the court. Not exactly ice cream in the pool levels of destruction, but not great optics either. I told him he needed to calm down. He said people were already treating him like the bad kid anyway, so what difference did it make? That sentence bothered me more than the basketball thing. Because that's the kind of logic that turns a frustrated teenager into a genuinely difficult one. Still, none of that changes the fact that this entire family conflict started over a dessert tray, which is the part I keep coming back to. The gift is still in my trunk, untouched. If Lily wants it, she can have it. I meant it when I bought it. But nobody seems interested in compromise anymore. Everyone wants apologies. Everyone wants admissions of guilt. Everyone wants someone to lose the argument. And apparently the easiest candidate for that role is a 14-year-old kid with a heart condition. So yeah, maybe I'm still being stubborn. Maybe I'm still the arsehole in this story, depending on who you ask. But if defending my son makes me that, then I'm not losing sleep over it. Continuation. A week after my last update, I finally took the birthday gift out of my trunk. The box had been sliding around back there every time I hit the brakes, which felt like some stupid metaphor for the whole situation dragging along behind me. I drove over to my sister's house in the middle of the afternoon. Didn't bring Caleb with me because I knew that would start another argument before the door even opened. My sister answered. We didn't hug or anything, just stood there like neighbors who barely know each other. I held the box out and said I was returning Lily's gift. I told her straight up that taking it was petty and I shouldn't have done it. Heat of the moment. I said that already, but I said it again because apparently people need to hear the apology version in person. She took the box, didn't thank me, didn't invite me inside either. Just said Lily still hadn't received an apology from Caleb, and that was the moment I realized we weren't moving forward at all. We were just replaying the same 30-second loop forever. So I told her kids throw things, kids get angry. That doesn't mean you drag a 14-year-old through a public trial. She didn't respond to that, just repeated that Caleb needed to take responsibility. I left after that because there was nothing else to say. At least the gift is back where it belongs. I'm not that evil, despite what some people seem to think. But that was the last time I stepped foot at my sister's house, and I don't plan on doing it again, not with Caleb, probably not without him either. The next thing that happened was the school counselor situation. Apparently, Caleb had been getting into arguments at school more than usual. Nothing violent, nothing suspension-worthy, just short-temper stuff. One teacher noticed and referred him to the counselor. Caleb told me about it when he got home, trying to play it off like it was no big deal. But the counselor apparently asked him a bunch of questions about stress at home and whether something had happened recently, which of course led to the birthday story coming up. So I called the school the next morning. I wanted to understand why my son was suddenly being treated like he needed emotional supervision. The counselor explained they'd noticed behavioral changes and wanted to check in. Fair enough. But when she started talking about conflict resolution and accountability, it sounded suspiciously like the school had already heard a version of the ice cream story. That's when I mentioned Caleb's heart condition and how unnecessary stress can affect his health. I said the last thing he needed was adults piling pressure onto him over a family disagreement that should have stayed inside the family. Apparently that conversation made its way back to my sister too, because a few days later she texted asking why I was involving the school in our argument. I told her the school got involved the moment Caleb started getting treated differently. Which they did. Kids talk, stories spread, none of this stays contained. Around the same time, something else happened that caught me off guard. Caleb came home one afternoon slamming doors and throwing his backpack onto the couch. I asked what happened. He said Ryan blocked him on social media. Ryan and Caleb used to message each other constantly. Dumb memes, game clips, normal teenage stuff. Now apparently Ryan decided he was done. Caleb said he tried messaging him from another account just to ask why, but Ryan ignored that too. I asked if they'd argued at school or something. He said no, which means the decision probably came from somewhere else. I called my sister that evening, not yelling at first, just asking why Ryan suddenly cut contact with Caleb. She said Ryan made that decision himself. I told her that was hard to believe given the timing. She said maybe Ryan just didn't want drama in his life. That sentence right there is when the call stopped being calm. Because apparently my son is now the walking embodiment of drama. So I said if Ryan wanted to avoid Caleb that badly, maybe we should just accept the message and keep our distance from their side of the family entirely. She didn't disagree with that idea, which tells you everything you need to know about where things stand. The worst part, though, happened about a week after that. Caleb and I were arguing about something small. I honestly don't even remember what started it, probably chores or screen time or something equally stupid. But it escalated fast. He's been like that lately. Quick fuse, sharp words. And in the middle of the argument, he yelled something I wasn't expecting. He said, "Fine, I did throw the stupid ice cream." Just like that. Then he immediately looked like he regretted saying it. I asked him what he meant. He started backtracking right away, saying he only said that because everyone already believed it anyway, that he was tired of defending himself. Now here's the thing people probably expect from me in that moment. They expect the dramatic parenting speech, the disappointment lecture, the consequences. But that's not what happened, because all I could see was a 14-year-old kid who's been carrying this argument around like a backpack full of rocks for weeks. So I told him something simple. Even if he did throw it, it doesn't change the fact that the adults involved handled it badly. And it doesn't change the fact that nobody should be humiliating a kid in front of a crowd. He didn't respond to that. I didn't push it further. Maybe that makes me a bad parent in some people's eyes. But the story didn't end there anyway. A few days after that argument, Caleb had a mild health scare. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to remind everyone that his condition isn't theoretical. He complained about chest discomfort after gym class, and the school nurse called us. We took him to his cardiologist to be safe. The doctor said it wasn't anything serious, but stress can absolutely trigger symptoms. Which brings us to the part where my wife and I had our biggest disagreement in years, because she said something I honestly didn't expect to hear from her. She said Caleb still needed consequences, not extreme punishment, just something that acknowledges he might have crossed a line that day at the party. I told her that after everything he's been through these past weeks, piling punishment on top of it would be ridiculous. She said accountability isn't the same thing as cruelty. I said protecting our kids' mental and physical health matters more than making my sister feel satisfied. We went back and forth like that for a while. Neither of us changed our minds, which is a weird place to be with your own spouse, realizing you're standing on opposite sides of a parenting decision that suddenly feels huge. So now I'm apparently the stubborn father defending bad behavior. According to some relatives, I'm the guy who refuses to teach his kid responsibility. According to strangers online, I'm enabling a spoiled teenager. And honestly, I'm tired of hearing it, because none of those people were there. None of them watched my son get surrounded by adults demanding a confession like he'd committed a felony. None of them understand what it's like raising a kid whose health has been fragile since infancy. They see a story about ice cream and bad manners. I see a kid who has spent his entire life being poked, scanned, restricted, monitored, and now apparently judged by half the family too. So yeah, maybe I lashed out a little recently. Some relatives posted vague stuff online about owning your mistakes and teaching kids accountability. I responded, probably more aggressively than necessary. But I'm done pretending everyone else's perspective is automatically the reasonable one. Here's where things stand now. The gift is returned. I'm not bringing Caleb to my sister's house anymore, and I'm not attending family gatherings if my son isn't welcome. If that means they disown me, then that's their choice. I won't abandon my kid just to keep the peace at holiday dinners. People can call that stubborn. They can call it bad parenting. They can call me an arsehole. But I know one thing for sure. My son won't ever have to wonder whether his father stood with him when everyone else decided he was the villain of a story about a plate of ice cream. Analysis. The entire thing is a perfect example of how a small incident turns into a full-blown family war when adults refuse to act like adults. I'm going to take a clear position here. The father is massively in the wrong, and most of the damage in this story exists because of his pride, not because of ice cream, not because of a sick child, and not because of a 16-year-old protecting her friend's dessert. Let's start with the actual incident. Lily spent the summer learning how to make homemade ice cream. She made dessert for her own birthday party. That's already generous. She and her friends wanted to eat their ice cream later, so she put their cups in the freezer. That's normal teenage behavior. Then Caleb comes along and wants more ice cream. Important detail, he and Ryan had already eaten ice cream earlier, so this wasn't about fairness or someone being excluded. He wanted more and was told no. That's where the first problem appears. A 14-year-old who cannot handle being told no. Lily refused because those cups belonged to her and her friends. Again, perfectly reasonable. And instead of walking away, Caleb escalates the situation until the plate ends up in the pool. Now let's talk about the evidence. Multiple witnesses. Lily's friends say Caleb threw the ice cream in the pool. Caleb denies it. Ryan backs Caleb up. That already smells like typical teenage loyalty. Cousins backing cousins, friends backing friends. But here's the critical difference. Lily immediately reacted emotionally, called her mom, and pointed to what happened. Caleb, meanwhile, sat there pretending to scroll on his phone and denied everything. That behavior matters. People who didn't do something usually react differently when chaos suddenly explodes around them. Now enter the real problem in this story, the father. Instead of pausing, calming the situation, and figuring out what actually happened, he immediately goes into defense mode. Not, let's sort this out. Not, Caleb, tell me what happened. His first instinct is protecting his son from embarrassment, and that instinct becomes the engine that drives the entire disaster. Because once he decides Caleb is innocent, every piece of evidence becomes a conspiracy against his kid, Lily's friends. Biased. His sister, targeting a sick child, the family, overreacting, the school counselor, overstepping, even his own wife questioning the situation becomes a problem. This is classic parental blind spot behavior. Parents sometimes become so protective that they stop evaluating their child's actions honestly. And in this story, the father goes so far into that mindset that even when Caleb blurts out in anger that he did throw the ice cream, the father still refuses to treat it as meaningful. Think about that moment. That is the biggest red flag in the entire story. Caleb confesses during an argument. That doesn't sound like a calculated lie. It sounds like a frustrated kid who finally admits the truth. But the father immediately reframes it as stress, pressure, or emotional exhaustion. Anything except responsibility. And this is where the father becomes the main villain of the situation. Because the original incident was small, a teenager throwing ice cream into a pool is annoying, immature, and disrespectful, but it's not a life-altering crime. It could have been solved in 5 minutes with a basic apology. Sorry, I got mad. That's it. Situation over. Instead, the father escalates everything. He argues publicly at the party. He storms out. He takes back the birthday gift. He contacts a witness's parent. He calls the school. He fights with his wife. He lashes out online. He turns the entire extended family against each other. All of that over one simple apology that never happened. Now let's address the part he keeps leaning on, Caleb's heart condition. Yes, that matters. A chronically ill child deserves empathy. But empathy is not immunity from consequences. And when a parent treats illness like a shield against accountability, it creates a dangerous dynamic. Kids quickly learn that their condition becomes a free pass. That's exactly what seems to be happening here. Caleb's behavior is getting worse. He's more aggressive, more defensive, more volatile. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when a child realizes the adults in their life will always defend them no matter what. Ironically, the only adult in the story acting rationally might be the father's wife. She's the only person saying Caleb should still face consequences. Not punishment for being sick, not humiliation, just consequences. That's parenting. Meanwhile, the father keeps framing himself as the only person protecting his son, when in reality he's isolating Caleb from his entire family. Ryan blocks him. Lily refuses to attend events with him. Family gatherings collapse. Relatives pick sides. And the father interprets all of that as persecution instead of the obvious outcome of his own escalation. Here's the harsh truth. The family probably would have moved on from the ice cream incident within a week if the father had simply said, "Caleb, apologize." Instead, he turned a minor teenage meltdown into a permanent family fracture. And the saddest part is that Caleb might grow up believing the entire world unfairly targets him, when the real problem was a parent who refused to teach him how to take responsibility.